You want me to leave you alone so you can decide if you want to break up or not? Don't worry. I'll decide for you. About 3 years ago now. I was in an abusive relationship. Sure. He never put a hand on me. But the emotional damage lasted a long time. To make a long story short, his favorite game to play was pretending that he was going to take his own life, and I was the only person in the world who could stop him. I'm sure you don't need any more explanation to understand his character. Not only was he verbally abusive and incredibly manipulative, but he of course was a very jealous person. The event that leads up to my story revolves around a guy who was a very close friend of mine. Funny thing is that my ex liked him too. Always had nice things to say about him. Got along with him really well, etc. But it came time for this friend to go to college and he was moving away. I was sad and expressed to my ex that I would miss him a lot. Suddenly, my then boyfriend became very cold and just stopped talking to me. For hours. Finally, after my texting him, nagging him, giving him his space, he let me know that he was hurt, disgusted, and betrayed. That I would ever speak about another man. The guy was 17. We were 19 like that. He let me know that he needed some time to himself to think about what to do with me. This was probably the 4th or 5th time he had given me the silent treatment as a form of punishment. And they would usually last about a week or so. I would beg, and beg, and beg, for him to talk to me. And finally he would grace me with his attention and let me know that I was blessed with his forgiveness for my cruelty. Lamau. So I sat and waited, anxious and unable to sleep, because I was terrified that he would threaten to take his own life again. Then maybe 3 or 4 days later something inside of me broke. I realized how peaceful things were for me when I wasn't talking to him. All of a sudden, my rose-tinted glasses came off and I realized that I had lost attraction to him a long time ago and I was only with him out of fear. He was, physically and mentally, revolting. So I decided what I was going to do with him. Sure, I could just have blocked him. And maybe nowadays I would have. But at the time, this guy caused me so much emotional distress and I wanted to make sure I rubbed it in. I decided to just stay silent. Like you wanted me to. And finally about 3 days after I made my decision, he texted me, "So, where are we?" I let him know that we were done. I have never ever seen him backtrack so hard. He blew up my phone with texts and phone calls saying how sorry he was for ignoring me. Then he tried to say it was my fault. And that he was actually giving me space because he thought I was mad at him. All I said was that I was done trying to be in a relationship with someone who refused to talk to me about problems. And expected me to be responsible for their life. I blocked him. He tracked down every account I had on every social media sending me these long paragraphs about how sorry he was. And he got blocked on those too. Yeah. I'm sure he was very sorry once he realized that he lost his favorite punching bag. This is where he surprised me. He was so caught up in his good guy, tough guy fate. I never thought he would try to involve other people. He went to our mutual friends and eventually drove them all away by begging them to make me talk to him. Or asking them to send me his long paragraphs. They read his letters to me and began to realize how horrible and manipulative he was. And soon they cut him off too. He showed his true colors to everyone shortly after and revealed himself as the abuser he always had been. But that's a different story for another day. Remember folks, communication is key. TL. Our ex-boyfriend expects me to sit in silence and wait for him to decide if we're going to continue to be together or not. I do what he wants. And I sit in silence. Undefined. The minute someone threatens suicide, you call in professionals to deal with it. Either they mean it and need help, or they're manipulating you and need to learn it doesn't work. My ex had a 72-hour hold turn into a 10-day commitment pulling speep like that. Why is your Valium gone? We just filled it. She wouldn't answer except to say it'll be your fault. Wouldn't tell the EMS whether she had taken it. Wouldn't talk to the police. That'll get you declared a danger to self or others. He tried to involve one of my friends who had just come back from suicide watch. She kind of panicked and asked me what I wanted her to do. I told her that he was probably going to her on purpose. Gave her his address. And let him know that she'd call the police for a wellness check if he kept threatening to hurt himself. She told me that he got pissed when she said that lol. I was with a woman for 5 years who did physical abuse and emotional abuse to me. I never hit her or did anything like that. And much like you said, on one of our many breakup times I realized how at peace I was without them. She controlled everything I did. Everyone I talked to. I remember one time my female cousin whom I am blood related to came over because a relative died and I was upset. She hugged me and my ex lost it. She made it seem like I was sexually engaged with my blood relative. That night she punched me so much my ribs were bruised. That is one example of the crazy speep she did. And as a guy it's harder to talk about abuse when it's a woman hitting a man. She was a nut. A mutual friend of ours told me that she went ape speep insane once I left her and they had to take her to a facility for mental health. I know how that is. I'm glad you are away from that. Keep on living for yourself and those who love you. Have a great day. You just dodged a bullet there. I am so proud of you that you had the clarity and the discernment to do what is right. You were also lucky your friend saw him for what he truly is. Most sociopaths are cunning enough to turn the people around you against you. Good job there. My ex-husband threatened to kill himself if I left him to go to college. I got married probably too young and I wanted a better life for myself. That being said, I had told him to do the same thing I was doing. That we could attend classes together for the Gen Ed requirements and we could have a new start. Because our relationship was already falling apart. He said he didn't want to. Obviously. He thought that I would give up my plans for him. Nope. I was glad to leave him behind. And he didn't exactly seem bothered after all. Since he didn't even try to contact me. Until 4 years had passed and I was marrying someone new. I blocked him and I haven't heard from him since. Thanks for letting me use your rag. Last year, I used to live with a dirty roommate. Thankfully I moved out of that place and she was very filthy. She created the biggest mess in the bathroom. She liked to cut her hair in the bathroom like it was a barbershop and leave all of the pieces of hair on the floor, sink, and toilet. There were times when she would not flush and leave traces of brown, red and yellow liquid on the toilet. I have yelled at her many times to clean up after her crap and she had the audacity to get angry at me. We always had screaming matches over her disgusting mess. I was done after I found clumps of hair from her private area. Yes. You know what I mean, all over the toilet seat. There were nasty stains on it as well. This was pretty typical. She was not home when I found her dirty mess and so I decided to call and yell at her. She told me she will clean it later and if I didn't want to wait, you can clean it yourself with a rag. So I did. I used her bath towel to clean it and left the dirty towel on her desk with a post-it that said thanks for letting me use your rag. It got pretty intense the next morning but it was worth it. Ugh. I'm a terrible housekeeper, disabled. Have to choose my daily battles. But there's one rule I try to stick to: nothing organic left out. Food, body fluids, etc. I don't mind the dust. But if it grows in a science experiment it needs to be cleaned up. I am admittedly not the tidiest person in the bathroom. But I have my own bathroom and I would never dream of making anyone put up with my level of not quite so clean. Your roommate is gross. This is perfect. I had a gross roommate in college and she kept our shared bedroom in chaos constantly. It got so bad at one point that I had to shuffle my feet from my bed to my closet and to the door just to make myself a walkway. I gave her a week to pick up her random stuff and when she didn't clean it I took a small plastic bin she had, dumped it out and filled it with her dirty dishes and put it on her bed. The rest of the room I had an organization bonanza. Trashed 3 bags of garbage and tossed all of her non-hanging clothing into her hamper, mixing dirty and clean clothes. She was furious. She slept in a different room the night she came back. But she eventually thanked me because she could finally find her expensive electronics that were buried under filth. Unfortunately, my peace didn't last long because it was a dirty 2 weeks later, but I no longer let it get that bad. I just kept pushing her mess minus dirty dishes under her bed. It was finally contained chaos and I had a threat that she knew I'd follow through cleaning it myself, so it never got to that level again. Yes. She had some issues she was medicated for, but there's a level that's no longer acceptable when it's a shared space. Ew. And ha 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 ha. What I found works great is taking pictures to post online of the mess. Label it the Chronicle of Smearmia or something. And make sure to tag the offender in it while making it public. Keep posting until everyone keeps spamming them about how disgusting it is. Issue will either improve or become even more unbearable, but it will be a fun ride. I lived in a shared house as employee housing for working at Yellowstone. One of my housemates had a cat that pissed and speeped everywhere. Oddly, she was also the most obnoxious about cleaning. Despite leaving cat turds on her floor until they were white. HR wouldn't do anything about it. Even though one of the camp hosts was very pregnant and couldn't be around the cat piss. I'll do a room inspection. After getting sick of hearing that for weeks, my friends and I stripped everything out of the girl's room. steam cleaned the carpets, and arranged it exactly the way it was in the HR lobby. The HR person moved her to a private cabin the next day, assigned me to write 10 pages. Okay. How does 10 pages of kindergarten or tablature paper sound? In high school, I wasn't a bad kid, per se. Mainly bored, unmotivated, with untreated trauma, severely depressed and dealing with a host of maladaptive coping mechanisms. I rarely got in too much trouble, nothing more than having to write a couple of pages or detention the 2 to 3 times I was assigned it over the 4 years I was a student there. But during one stretch of dealing with a new medication that made it impossible to wake up in time in the mornings, I was tardy several times. As this was around 2000 to 2004, see above. Maladaptive coping mechanisms, mainly of the chemical type, makes it a blur. I don't quite remember how many times, but it was enough that I got assigned to write 10 pages. Front and back is 1 page by one of the assistant principals, Mr. B. He was kind of a hard ass. 30 years as a military police officer will do that. But he was incredibly kind and actually gave a damn about every single student there. For instance, he would walk me to class to tell the teacher not to mark me late when I spent the whole class change period talking to him. Because if I was talking to him, the bullies would stay far, far away. Which he knew. Many meetings with other parents, administrators, Board of Education yielded no results. So this was a better than nothing solution in a speepty situations. Something Mr. B was happy to help with however he could. Anyways, I ended up with a scathingly brilliant idea. See, at this time, my sister and my niece were living with my parents and me. My niece was in kindergarten at the time. So on my way home from school, remembering the tablature paper kids use when they first learn how to write, I stopped by a dollar store to pick up a notebook. It took me about 15 minutes to do those 10 pages. So I put them in my bag and got to the rest of the evening. The next day, I handed these pages into Mr. B. He looked at them, and then me, and back to them a couple of times before he started laughing and shaking his head. You get one. Diapason. Do I have to spell every single thing out and not leave any room at all for a loophole with you? I just shrugged and pointed to my pages. I also got assigned pages on college, ruled only from thenceforward. I hated writing for punishment. I had one teacher that would make you write, I will pay attention in class, or I will not talk in class, or my favorite, I will sit still in class. You get the idea. 100 times. I 44F was an unmedicated 8 years old with ADHD back in the early 80s, before ADHD was widely diagnosed, especially in females. Back then it was commonly believed that ADHD only occurred in boys. My report cards from elementary school are all the same. AB honor roll with lots of doohickey. 76 fails to use her time wisely. She is disruptive, fails to pay attention, and talks too much to her peers. You'd think someone would have realized what was up, but I didn't get an official diagnosis of ADHD until I was 28 years old. Sometimes it's the strict teachers that care the most. It seems that Mr. B left a lasting positive impression upon you, and thus he is a success in my book. Drink my creamer. Enjoy no Wi-Fi. This happened yesterday. I bought myself a large specialty coffee creamer a few weeks ago. Nothing fancy, but a treat, as I rarely drink coffee. Now, some family members have an issue taking my things and blaming each other when confronted. This leads to serious annoyance on my part, as I can't prove which one did it and thus am just out the item. If they'd ask, I'd generally be fine sharing. Now, last month I bought 2 huge creamers and told 2 of them they could share. I ended up only getting to use about 2 tablespoons of creamer from one bottle and none of the other. So this month I put my initials clearly on top of the bottle and did not offer to share. Well, yesterday I realized it was being used. Not by me, so I asked in front of everyone who did it. Of course the 2 suspects blamed each other. Now I know it's just coffee creamer, but it's more so the lying that gets me. So as revenge, as I pay the cable/internet, I paused everyone else's Wi-Fi access. I have been asked about 6 times now if I can call the provider and fix the issue. But I just blamed it on a current storm and said I'd call tomorrow. I know this wasn't exciting, but damn does it feel good. Undefined. But why can't you tell my creamer is replaced? I guess it's no internet for you too. And say anytime my creamer is missing from now on, it will be no internet. Also, the rager will definitely figure out it's me eventually, but won't be able to actually prove it, which will annoy him, so I'll get some satisfaction from that. Oh hell no. Nobody touches my coffee creamer and lives to tell the tale. That stuff is gold. Especially if it's Southern butter. Sorry, had a moment there. Tell them the Wi-Fi will return when you get 2 new creamers in the fridge and people stop stealing them. Give it about 3 hours without their egg and slots games and they will cave. Lamau. Hey. When everyone is together, go get the creamer. Take a good-sized mouthful. Gargle it around. Spit it back into the container right in front of them. Go put it back in the fridge. If anyone says a peep, just say it's your creamer and that it shouldn't bother them one bit since they never steal it. Right? This is why I locked away everything that was mine because others would take without asking. Lie when confronted, and the thing is that I never mind sharing when asked, and if they would replace the item I wouldn't mind at all. Taking away internet access is the perfect revenge. Keep them hanging on for as long as you can. And frankly, tell them it's time to pony up for the cost. No more free internet. I would lock my stuff away if I could too. I don't blame you. It's just food. But on top of all the other issues I've had with these two in particular, it really bothers me. They definitely won't pay for the internet, so I won't even waste my breath on that, but anytime they pass me off from now on, a storm will knock their Wi-Fi out. Dear Up. There are a number of fun examples of getting revenge on someone who steals food. What follows is an interesting one I have heard of. Go to the grocery store and buy some food dye. In particular, yellow. As well as an extremely cheap quart-size container from a generic brand, so it could be anyone. Buy a jar of mayonnaise. And a small package of generic and cheap banana pudding. In the middle of the night, put the mayo in the container. Mix the yellow food dye and pudding with a disposable utensil and put it in the fridge. Maybe even sprinkle on some graham crackers to make it look more realistic. Don't bother labeling it. It'll end up in the right hands in due time. Whoever is throwing up in the morning will 1. Never steal food from you again. 2. Will be audibly throwing up soon. 3. Start hating someone else and or accuse someone of doing it. Possibly starting escalating anger against them. It's not going to end well for the other awful people in your apartment as